Alright, the final review is for normal distribution in Unit 8. So the calculated directions for finding standard deviation is you first hit Stat Edit, just like you're doing scatter plots. You would fill in the table. You'll just fill in the first column this time. And then after you fill that in, you hit Stat. You arrow over to Calc, just like scatter plots, but this time you hit 1. You'll go down, hit Calculate, and you'll get a big long list. And so mean is the first thing on that list. It's the X with the line above it. And standard deviation is the O with the hat, X. If you arrow down, you will get median. It's MED. Then to find percentages, what you do is you hit second vars 2. That'll pull up a menu with the lower and the upper, and then the mean and standard deviation, so you fill everything in. However, sometimes the problem will ask something like lower than or less than a certain number. If that's the case, it'll only give you one number. So that means your lower number will be 0, and your upper number will be whatever number they gave you. It may say higher than or above or something like that. And again, only give you one number. If that's the case, your upper will be the biggest number on the bell curve. So you will have to make a bell curve and figure out what the biggest number on it is. Formula to find the z-score, what you do is you take x. What x stands for is the data value. So whatever I'm trying to find the z-score of, you subtract the mean, and you divide by the standard deviation. So a couple examples. In the US, the average IQ is 100, so that is the mean. Standard deviation of 15. What is the percentage of population you would expect to have IQ lower than 85? So it's asking for percentage, and it says lower than. So that means I'm going to have to use the lower than. So I go to my calculator. And I do second vars 2. And I fill in the menu. So it says lower than, so 0 is my lower, and then 85 is my upper. The mean is 100, and then the standard deviation is 15. So I'll go down and I hit paste. So then I times it by 100. So I get 15.8 or 15.9 if I round it. The next one, it says using the information from question 1, what is the z-score of 120? So I'm going to use the z-score formula. So to find the z-score of 120, I take 120, I subtract the mean of 100, and I divide by the standard deviation of 15. So when I do that, 120 minus 100 is 20, divide by 15. That gives me 1.3 repeating, or you could use the fraction version. To find 80, I do 80 minus the mean, divided by the standard deviation. That gets you negative 20 over 15, so they get negative 1.3. The next one, Professor Halen has 184 students. The scores in the midterm are normally distributed with a mean of 72.3 and standard deviation 8.9. How many students can be expected to receive a score between 82 and 90? So to figure out how many students, what you have to do first is figure out the percentage between 82 and 90. So I am going to go back to my calculator and do second vars 2. Between 82, so 82 my lower, 90 is my upper. It tells us our mean is 72.3. It tells me the standard deviation is 8.9. So normally, if I'm just asking for a percentage, I would just multiply by 100, but it's asking how many students. So this time I have to multiply by the number of students, and it says 184 students at the beginning of the problem. And since it is talking about a real life value, you don't want to use a decimal because you can't have a decimal of a student. So I'm going to round this to 21 students. Last one, it tells me about the residents of New York and the snowfall, and it gives me some data and says what's the mean and population standard deviation to the nearest hundredth. So what I need to do to find the mean and standard deviation is the first thing that I mentioned in this lesson. I have to go to Stat Edit in my calculator. I fill in all of the data into L1, which is already done. And then I hit Stat. I go over to Calc, and I hit 1 this time. I go down and hit Calculate. Brings up this menu. So the first one at the very top is the mean. The O with the hat is the standard deviation. And if it would ask for the median, I would go down, and there's the median right there. But this is just asking for the mean and standard deviation. So the mean in this case, this is to the nearest hundredth, is 9.5, and the standard deviation 3.7. All right, now you can go ahead and do the Socrative quiz.